Excuse me. Okay, the Chugach 120 is the 100. Oh, is that what I thought these were mics.
No, you could use that one, I think.
Hello?
There you
Okay. So the Chugach 120 is the 120 peaks in Chugach State Park, which I just finished this last year. Thank you. And this is just a little presentation about that. It was cool because I got to go through all my photos, and here I'll share them. It all started back when I first moved to Anchorage from Juneau, and I was really excited to come up here because there was a mountaineering club. I was excited to be able to go to that and meet people and see what mountains there were. It was kind of weird. I'm not used to talking into a microphone. Okay.
Give you a lapel mic if you'd rather.
This is fine. I got it. I karaoke. It'll work. Yeah, I think the first peak that I climbed was Pepper Peak when I moved up here, and I thought it was Goat Mountain at the time. I had a newspaper that said Chugach State Park, and it had like little dotted lines for Twin Peaks Trail and little tiny triangles for the different mountains. It had like Twin Peaks and Goat Mountain. I think it had Bold over here. It was very different than how it is now. And these are just photos from early on. As it was in second grade when we came up here and started climbing these mountains. We used to climb Mount Juneau prior to that. Okay, go on. And when we climbed mountains, he had a hiking journal, and I would have him write out a little, little thing about the mountain each time. So this was from South Suicide Peak, and then the photos are from actually North Suicide Peak, which we did just with some random friends. I met this guy, Dwayne, because I was teaching skiing at Alyeska, so I met him at the ski school, and we decided to do North Suicide in the spring after skiing ended, and he invited his friend Dwayne, who I'd never met before, and his wife Janie, and we all went in to do it, and the only people that continued up past Rabbit Lake were I and the Dwayne that I had never met before. And we climbed up the snow on the south side, didn't quite get to the top, and then curved around, and we glissaded down right above that huge cliff on the north, I guess that's the west side. And Dwayne grabbed who is in second grade, and grabbed him in his lap. I was kind of plunge stepping down. I was like, it's kind of steep. I think I'll wait a little bit to glissade. And he grabbed put him in his lap, and just took off down. And then they got down, and I'm looking down, and he's like there, hey, there's a cliff. There's a cliff. And he had come up on that huge cliff at the bottom, which is fine. You can just traverse around. But it was interesting, and that's how we started. This is a trip that we did with Wayne Todd. We camped up at Crow Pass, and we're camped at a little lake, not the big lake by Crow Pass, but a little lake up above Crow Pass. And from there we climbed up on, is this popping a lot?
A little farther away from you.
Okay, it's hard to.
I can turn it down.
It might be interfering with the lapel.
Oh, I bet that's what it is, huh? There. Well, I think it's for the Zoom. Can you guys hear me without it? No. Okay, we'll go with this. Okay, that's good. Okay, yeah, that is better. Yes, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, so we left camp and climbed up the ridge of Summit Mountain, and then all the way along that ridge, and then down the other side over to the Milk Glacier. This is probably on top of Summit. And then down to the Milk Glacier, and then up the shoulder of Goat over that. There's a big Berkshire to cross, and then there's steep snow to climb, and climbed Goat Mountain. And and then came back. We went over, did both summits of Goat, and then came back down and crossed the Milk Glacier, And it got on the way back, it got late and it got foggy. And we were roped up, and we actually had a map and compass out that we were trying to use to go back to and then we ended up in this, it didn't work out well. We ended up in this crevasse field, and eventually we did find the ridge, and we ended up benighted, so we spent the night on the ridge. And then in the morning we went back and got back to our camp. And then this is from Calliope, which is up in South Fork. On the way in, and this was such a wonderful trip. It's so beautiful. I love South Fork of Eagle River, and we went in and camped and went up the Flute Glacier. And we went up kind of a series of chimneys and, got to the ridge and got to the summit. We had beautiful weather in the morning, but then, as happens so often, the weather came in, and then it started to rain, and we thought maybe it wasn't best to go back down the rock. So instead we decided to, much to Az's dismay, do like 7 lower rappels down the glacier.
So, yeah, if you've ever looked at Calliope, if you've ever looked at the summit of Calliope, there's a big like snow ramp above this cliff that's probably like a couple thousand feet or something. And I will say, I was not stoked on the ice. I was like, let's go down this way we came up, guys. But these guys were crazy about it. So it looks appealing from the summit, but then from coming in, like, oh, there's a huge cliff under all this. And so we were rappelling off of like, I don't know, a couple ice screws and some dinky rope down there. And the joke was I got a hard time about it because the day before, I, being a kid, I didn't want to eat the rice, and I was complaining and saying we were going to die from the rice. And then the next day, I was like, we're going to die on the ice. We're going to die on the ice. So they wouldn't stop teasing me about it. But it was an excellent trip. But yeah, this was intense. It looks like it might just be a little snowfield, but it was quite a few rappels there.
And it was actually glacier ice, as you can see. We did have, I think it was 50 feet of 7 mil that then Wayne would lower Az and I would put an ice screw in halfway down, and then I had one at the bottom to belay off, and I think we had like 3 ice, I don't know, anyway. Anyway, we all survived, and here we are. This is from Bashful. We had a beautiful day climbing Bashful. This is before getting in the couloir, and then here's on the summit ridge. And yeah, I don't have a real story about this except that this was such a beautiful climb. We also got benighted on this, even though it was almost solstice. This was just Wayne and I. And is this Eagle Peak?
It's Eagle Peak.
Eagle Peak. I guess I should look over here.
Probably the little crux that you go through on Eagle Peak on the south side.
Yeah, this looks like the crux on Eagle Peak up on the south side. This was also, I love South Fork. Those peaks are so beautiful, and this must be almost on the summit. And on the summit. And this is going in for the nest. This is more typical Chugach bushwhacking, kind of what you end up doing on your way in all the time. And this is on the summit of the nest. We came from one side, and let's see. So the people on the summit from left to right are Steve Grun, Tom Choate, Az, me, Kelly, and my friend Amy Hogsman, and it's probably Wayne that's taking the picture. And Steve and Tom came in. They had gone way up Bird Creek and climbed another peak.
Microphone a little closer.
On the way. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. They had gone up and climbed another peak on the way, and then we ended up meeting on the summit of the nest. Here, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Wayne was up there, and Steve had come up and was up there before Wayne, and so the story goes, Steve basically was like, "Oh, Wayne, you just missed a first ascent by like 5 or 10 minutes." So I mean, it had been climbed before, but he got Wayne's blood pressure up probably a little bit.
This is from the Eklutna Traverse. This is where I did Whiteout and Insignificant and Hut Peak.
Admirable pack there.
We were doing a shakedown for Denali, so we took all of our gear that we were going to take on Denali on the Eklutna Traverse, which isn't a good idea. I do not recommend that. And this is climbing Whiteout Peak, and there's on the summit. And we looked, this was our objective for the next day, Insignificant Peak. We went back. We didn't camp in the huts because we were doing the shakedown thing, so we had this huge tent that we had taken. But the next morning looked like this. So we did retreat to the hut. And then the next day, though, we got up, and it was actually pretty nice, so we were able to do it. And then this is probably going over to Rosie's. And this is on the way to Benign Peak. I spent some time up at Pitchler's. And every day we climbed over this cornice. Go to the next one. Yeah, every day the first day we climbed up through this, actually 3-layered cornice that we climbed up every day. But it worked out fine. It was fun. And this is on top of Benign.
And you can see Bellicose in the background there.
Oh yeah, Bellicose in the
Segue
background.
nicely.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Because the next one is Bellicose. Yep. That I did with Todd Steele and Dave Hart, and then I'm the next person, and Wayne's taking the photo. On our way in, this is from Rumble Pass. Yeah, on the way, we did it the weekend after Memorial Day, and in the afternoon there was just all kinds of snow coming down on the cliffs. And this is up on the summit ridge, which I've told many people we didn't use a rope. I'm sure we didn't, but then I came across this photo. I was looking at, apparently we did. I guess I just forgot. And looking down at the glacier, Bellicose, the Shroud Glacier. And there's the summit. That's me, Dave Hart, and Todd Steele. And there's Wayne and I. I got to be in both summit photos. And then Wayne and I did a trip to do Peril and Beelzebub. We went over the 4th of July weekend, and this was the weekend of the 4th of July of the Big Lake fire. So it just gets hazier and hazier, and we have no idea what's going on. But that was fine. It was still beautiful weather. And we were doing this thing where we were trying to get sponsored by Great Harvest. So we were holding this Great Harvest stuff out. And this is Beelzebub. And this is the haze coming in. And we did another trip then. We went in and camped. We went up Bird Ridge and camped kind of back in there and climbed all the Bird Ridge peaks over a couple of days. This is on the Beak. On the ridge line to the Beak. I don't remember, there's a bunch of peaks back there and I don't remember, it was a long time ago. It's been a long journey for me.
Yeah, this is 2000, back in 2000, so 24 years ago?
Yeah, 24 years ago. And yeah, there's this kind of neat couloir. I think this is on the wing, maybe. It's very skinny. Is it on Tail Feather? Okay, yeah. This is on the summit of Flute Peak. And we had kind of a fun climb on Flute Peak. It was Wayne and Steve Wilson and I. And we went up, we did it as a day trip. We started at the South Fork Trailhead and went up around the lakes and up the glacier and up over a pass down onto the Oregon Glacier. And then climbed up the snow and up the ridge and to the top. And it was a pretty nice day, but then, clouds started coming in and we started to get St. Elmo's fire while we were up there. So we had the rope out and we each went to the summit separately. I don't remember who led up there, but they, brought each one and then we'd go down. And each time we threw the rope, there was like crackling. It was exciting. And then we came down the other side of Flute to the Flute Glacier. There's a couloir there. And it has a pretty good bergschrund. We got down there and it's like, oh, there's a pretty big bergschrund. But we were able to make a snow bollard and just rappel down. And it worked out. I wasn't sure it would work out, but it did. It works fine. And this is California Peak. We had a really nice trip on California Peak. We went up California Creek Trail and up Gentoo Peak, just shy of Gentoo Peak. And then we took the ridge from there over to California Peak. It's kind of scrambly, but it was pretty doable and fun. And then up the ridge. I think Az really liked it.
It's an enjoyable scramble. I'll say that about it.
Yeah, and then we went around the ridge and came out in between Magpie and Ragged Top, and then you can drop down and come out Crow Pass Trail. And that was made for a nice loop. And then this was Concerto. So Wayne and I did Concerto and U. This is actually on U Peak. We had a kind of a circular thing where we camped at the lake, Symphony Lake, and climbed up like in the pass by Triangle, and then went down and climbed Concerto, and then climbed up U, and then came out the Flute Glacier. So we did like a whole circumnavigation of Calliope.
Yeah.
Right. And that's on U, or I think that's on Concerto. This is from Crow and Camp Robber Peaks. We had really beautiful weather on this trip. I really only like to go when the weather's good. That's part of why it took me so long to climb them all. Az brought that Dr. Seuss hat.
Yeah, we're both wearing helmets, but you got the Seuss hat. It's good head protection. Yeah, we went up and climbed Crow Peak and then did the ridge over to Camp Robber. And there's some really cool rocks on the way. There's that Rook Couloir in the background. And this is from Bounty Peak, which I did with my brother Ben and Dave Hart. I kind of just got in on that trip, which was kind of nice. Bounty is really, I feel like it's one of the special ones because it's farther back, and you just get these grand views. It's just beautiful. Yeah, you really can see back on the Nick Glacier from that area, and a bunch of stuff that you don't get a glimpse on as much in the front range of the park, and it's just so glaciated and lush, and there's not a lot of travel back there. It's a super cool area.
Let's see, this is Oak. Okay, so this is a trip I did with Dave Hart and Ross Knopfsinger. We went and did Peters Peak. I was happy to get in on this trip because I hadn't been climbing, and but I managed to get in on this. And yeah, we went up and climbed. We went in and camped in, what is it, Peters Creek Valley?
Yeah, up at the headwaters
of Peters Creek. We had this beautiful camp spot, and then we climbed Peters Peak from there. And while I was there in the tent, I tented with Dave. And Ross brought this kind of weird thing that he slept in. We didn't want him to sleep in that. And he had like a sheet that had the list of, he carried with him in the tent this sheet with a list of the 120 peaks and the ones that he'd done. And then also like the ones his friends had done so that he'd know who he could call to do different peaks. And I was sitting looking at that in the tent, and he was like, Kathy, it wouldn't take you that much to just finish this. Oh, okay. And so that kind of inspired me to try to work on it. And it still took me probably 10 or 15 years after that to actually finish them, but I finally did.
That's a pretty good view of the route, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of a, it's like, there's like a knifey ridge that you do, but it's really doable. It's real walkable. And then you get up to the end and it gets more scrambly. We got the rope out, which was nice. Yeah. And then this is looking back up Peters Creek Valley. It's a pretty nice place. Peters Creek Valley is pretty beautiful. There's so many beautiful places in the state park, and that's, climbing all the peaks helps, you get to get out there and see them all. It's fun. Okay, so this is the, eventually then I found Peak Beggar and just started marking off the ones I'd done. By the time I found Peak Beggar, I'd already done quite a few, so I just I don't have dates. I don't remember dates, but I put them all in there. And it's nice when you put your peaks in Peak Beggar, it marks it as green, so then it helps you see easily which ones you haven't done and which ones you have done.
Yeah, that's a nice feature. And so for those of you that don't know, the 120 peaks, basically the parameter is it's got to be in the state park, 500 feet of prominence. And it really ranges in difficulty a lot. So there's some pretty easy peaks in there. Probably the easiest is like Bird Ridge, I'm sure most of you have probably done that. And then it ranges to much harder peaks like Baleful, where you're gonna have some scrambling, some like light rock climbing and glacier travel and all of that. So it really gives you a huge variety of like easy backpacking trips that are just gorgeous alpine walks to like more technical stuff. So there's good versatility in the list, I would say.
Which we covered that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought that was on the other slide. Okay.
When I was initially not, I went through a lot of different with this list of whether or not I was going to do them. For a while, I wasn't going to because of this peak. Espay was on the list, and I didn't think I ever wanted to climb it. But then, because it's brushy, if a lot of people go up Bird Creek, and it's brushy and it doesn't really appeal to me. But I then discovered that if you just go up high and stay high, it's really a beautiful alpine ridge out in the middle of the state park, and you get these great views, and it's just sort of glorious. I liked it. This is the view of it. You're looking down at the long ridge of Espay there. We went in, let's see, where did we go? We went up by Gentoo Peak and then through a couple passes, and then you're looking down at that. This valley is, Espay is on one side and Rebel Top's on the other.
Yeah, and that's the ridge walk. So you basically have two, like the easier way would be to just go back that Bird Valley trail, which is kind of a four-wheeler trail, and schwack up. It's not the most appealing way. This is a lot longer route, but you can stay and get the views, and you're not schwacking through alders and stuff, depending on what you enjoy,
Actually, that's the peak we were coming from, Tom and I, when we met you on
That's
we
right.
were doing that because we didn't want to go through the brush again.
Oh, good call, good call. Yeah, we had a campsite. We camped by the lake back behind Gentoo Peak. It's gorgeous, and yeah, good call, Steve. And you get these views. This is the backside of Bird Peak is what you're looking at when you come back from along Espay. And then Az and I did the miter together. Actually rented that little thing for the bicycles so that we could put stuff on it. He could haul it in for us. And we stayed at Serenity Falls Hut and did it as a day trip from Serenity Falls Hut, which worked out pretty well. It's kind of long, but nice and spicy. I felt like the miter was spicy. Has a lot of exposure. We started out on the wrong route when we got to the scrambling, so that gave us a little extra spice for the day.
Yeah, I had not done a lot of climbing in a long time at that point. I hadn't been on a glacier in like years and years, so it was like pretty eye-opening for me. And then I had heard, because my mom had went and tried it a couple times, of like how bad the crux to get up was, and how terrible it was. So I was like super frightened of it. And so I was like, well, we could just go up one of these gullies like before we got to the crux, thinking, oh, this is gonna be better. And then we got like halfway up that gully and it was just super exposed and freaky. And I looked over and the anchor, I could see one of the anchors like 100 feet, you know, in the other direction, but unreachable. And I was like, I think you gotta go over that way to get down. Because it was, yeah, it went from like not really adrenaline racing to pretty like intense very, very quickly on the route. And then after that, it wasn't too bad, but it was consistently scrambly, I would say.
It's one of my favorites too, because I liked it. I don't know if I want to do it again though. And is that the summit? I think that's the summit. Ovis in the background. And as on the summit. That's definitely the summit.
That's the summit. So Bold Peak and the Clutna Lake in the background there.
And on the way down? Yeah, oh yeah, this is on the way down. And then we rappelled a fair number of times. The last rappel, we actually had a goat come over and like hang out pretty close to us, kind of like he was watching to see, are you guys getting out of here? This is my spot. Clutna Glacier. And Az likes to swim on the way out, which is great, because that gives me a break.
It's a very spiritual experience for me. You gotta jump in the lake afterwards for sure. Like, you might get in trouble in the mountains if you don't.
Where is this? Is this Boisterous? Oh, it's Boisterous. This is the summit of Boisterous.
Yep, and I think we didn't take any photos on the way up because we were just frightened and trying to get to the top. But we did get some good ones on the way down.
Coming back across this little ledge that we had to go across to get up there.
Yeah,
sidewalk. It was a sidewalk.
Sidewalk. Yeah, I would say that's about the crux right in there. It's pretty exposed, and like one side just like a drop, and then the other side is like a pretty good drop onto this just like sheet of super steep glacial ice, and you get on this little sidewalk and stuff. It was pretty fun.
And this is more of the ridge, another part of it, me scrambling around. And this is, so that is the ridge that Skyline Ridge is the ridge that we use to climb Boisterous. And you get great views of Baleful from Boisterous.
Yeah, so that ridge line is one of the standard routes up Baleful. There's
another view of Baleful. You can really see how much taller the summit of Baleful is from the little white slab rock place. Okay, we went up to Blue-Eyed Lake and did Devil's Mistress and Sunlight. And when we came through the pass on the way to Blue-Eyed Lake, we ran into Eric Parsons, who was great because he had just done it and he gave us all the info on the route, so it made it really easy. Blue-Eyed Lake is really a wonderful place to camp. I loved it. And this is the rappel that Eric, and that was one of the things is Eric pointed out, oh yeah, this, and then don't doubt, you can rappel all, and it worked. It worked out really well. Rappelling down to Blue-Eyed Lake.
Yeah, one thing I had not known about Blue-Eyed Lake, I thought it was the color of the lake, but it's actually the flowers there. And then another interesting fact is if you go there in the spring, it's like really blue and nice. And then we went once in the fall and it was all like gray. So they tell everyone like, oh, it's this beautiful blue lake, it's gonna be so pretty. And then you go and in the fall, I think because it gets down to where it's just glacier melt into it, it gets really silty and kind of gray. So just interesting stuff about Blue-Eyed Lake.
As rappelling down. It was really hot when we did this. Seems like it gets hotter and hotter on those sunny days, on those south-facing slopes. And then we did Sunlight right afterwards, so then we could look back, and that's Devil's Mistress from the other side, from the Inferno Pass. I don't know what that glacier's called. West Branch of the Eklutna Glacier. Thank you, Steve. And Summit of Sunlight. And this was a really fun trip I did with Charlie Sink and Elena Hines and Eric. This is the summit of Finch Peak. And this is coming back down. Actually down climbed. Eric skied down. I didn't take my skis because I didn't really see a good ski because it was all kind of rotten snow, but he found a way. And we went up and we camped in the pass then in a little mega mid thing. And then the next morning we did Bunting, the pass between Rosie and Bunting. We camped in. And we kind of, after we did Bunting, we kind of had bad weather and we ended up at the hut. And this is Elena and I out in front of the hut. Rosie's hut. And then this is on the summit. The next morning we got up and on our way out we did Raven Peak. And that's Elena, me, and Eric, which is a great ski. This is Kelly Peak, which we did, which as Charlie Sink and I did together. And well, this, it looks like great weather, but there's only a couple pictures from this trip. Because we started out in the parking lot, the forecast was good, but as we biked around the lake, after about 5 miles in, it started pouring rain, like really pouring. And there was lightning, you could hear lightning in the peaks around, and it actually was, the puddles filled up to the point where, my feet were getting wet on my bike. And we got soaked. And we ended up stopping at Serenity Falls Hut for a while, kind of deciding what to do. The people that had rented the hut finally showed up, and so kind of pushed us out. And we decided, okay, we'll go up to Pitchlers. And it actually was kind of nice on the way to Pitchlers. We made it up there, but then in the morning, the cloud level was about 100 feet above Pitchlers. And we just went ahead and did it anyway, because we were there. And so we went up the glacier and climbed, what is that peak that we?
Pellet Point?
Polar,
yep.
By accident, because really then we had to come back to Pellet Peak.
Pellet Point, yeah.
And then you cross over this ridge, and it might have been good it was in the clouds, because I don't know how exposed it is. It's a little bit of scrambly. We had, I was into using that Gaia app, which everyone knows about, of course, finally at this point. And we just, we get the phone out every once in a while. My phone didn't have enough battery to actually just leave on, so I was turning it on and off all the time. But yeah, we were able to do the whole thing using Gaia on those ridges. We got lost once. After we had to turn off the main ridge to get over to Kelly, we ended up on this waterfall. And we're like, what are we doing? But it did end up working out.
Yeah. So it was proof that you can navigate basically anything with Gaia. I mean, you might not want to, but you can really do some navigation. I had no idea. My mom knew more about it than I did. She'd just check every once in a while on the glacier, and you couldn't see anything. And it was funny too, because we were with Charlie Sink. Charlie Sink, and he gets after it. And so when we got into that waterfall area, we're kind of like, oh, maybe we should turn around, and we'd put a lot of effort into getting the peak at that point. And he was like, no, wait, get out the GPS, let's go. And he was after it. So I would credit him with pushing for that summit for sure.
As I recall, I was ready to go back, and I got it out, and he's like, which way is the peak? And I'm like, it's that way. And he just left. There was no discussion. It was just okay.
But yeah, I would say it's similar to Espay. You can go up the East Fork and just come through the bushes, or you can stay on the ridge. And supposedly, if you stay on the ridge, the views are amazing. I've seen some photos of it, but for us, it was probably the same as just schwacking up.
I was hoping for these amazing views. The forecast was good. And this is from Emerald Peak. And part of the appeal of, I think, doing these mountains in the state park right here is that you kind of know the area and you can just kind of figure out how you want to do it. We went in and camped at Twin Falls on Eagle River Trail, and then just did it as a day trip from there, and went up to Blue-Eyed Lake, and then down to Thunder Gorge, and then up and over Emerald Peak, which is another just gorgeous ridgeline back in the state park, where you're probably not going to see anybody. Although it is changing, so there are more people now. Oh, this is one that Az and I did actually fairly early on. We did synthesizer and bird pass peak together on a very sunny weekend. But this is a view of Devil's Mistress and Beelzebub. And this is probably going up into Paradise Valley to Paradise Pass. And then climbing synthesizer. We went up and camped in Moraine Pass for this, so up and over Paradise Pass and then down to Moraine Pass and then up the ridge of synthesizer, which is also another beautiful Chugach Peak. And that's the summit. And is that Grizzly Bear Lake? Probably. I'm not sure. Might be Grizzly Bear Lake. Is it? Okay. Oh, thanks.
So yeah, Bird Pass Peak is one of those ones that's just way out in the middle of the park. There's not like a super, I think it's Bird Pass Peak, but yeah, there's not a super easy way to get to it. It's like you could either go way up Bird Ridge or Bird Valley or come around from Girdwood, but it's super cool because you get out there and you got Grizzly Bear Lake and a lot of really pretty areas, and it feels like a little more remote than some of your stuff closer in.
This was a nice way to do it, to go from Moraine Pass, because I don't like brush that much, if you can't tell. And this is going for white lice. It must be white lice, yeah. So this is headed back up the Eklutna Glacier to Pitchlers. Back up to the hut, there's that same slope to get to Pitchlers. And this is White Lice Peak. And the summit is actually on the left side, the way you're looking at it.
Yes, so
I guess it's the same. I don't know.
So White Lice is like an interesting one in that you can tell like all the summits look pretty close together in height. I think honestly there's probably like a 10-foot difference maybe. And it's pretty, like, you would have to be quite the climber to get from the left side to the right side. Like, you basically have to do it as like an independent climb. Like going through that notch would be pretty deadly. So people have done like different stuff, like water bottle techniques. So the accepted summit is the left summit, or that's the one most people are doing now. The north summit, the left summit, and then the right summit, which is actually labeled as White Lice in a lot of the maps, is considered not to be quite as tall. But I don't know if there's really like a way to dial that level of accuracy with taking photos and like water bottle stuff. So we need like a survey team that's gonna go to the left summit and the right summit and can figure this thing out. So maybe an MCA project in the future, you know?
So Pitchlers with white lice in the background. And this is the ridge line on the way over. We went up to the pass between Ovis and White Lice and just did the ridge from there, which is spicy. I felt like it was spicy and rotten. It seemed like very rotten.
And here you can clearly see that the left summit is the higher summit from this photo.
And then the way we set up the rope, we ended up doing the summit one at a time, because you go down and then across, and I like to take a huge piece of webbing and put it over the entire ridge, because it's the Chugach and the rock's rotten. So that's what we did.
Yeah, you kind of rappel down from this area into this little notch, and then you still have some scrambling to do, but it's not as bad when you traverse over.
Yeah, and that way we could, let's see, we just sort of belayed each other one at a time down and then back up that part, and then just untied from the rope and did the last part, which was pretty reasonable. And this is on the ridgeline back over to Ovis. This is from Polar Bear Peak, which it took me forever to finally summit this one. I think I tried like 7 times before I finally made it, but I did finally do it. This is our camp. We had a beautiful climb and a beautiful camp and great snow. We got to ski, It was awesome. I went with Meg and Tim and Az.
Yep, and it was on Mother's Day. So
Oh,
the
that's
day we
right.
climbed it,
That's right.
Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And you can see the route pretty well in there, but you kind of, it's one of those ones like Bellicose where there's a hanging glacier over a big cliff and then you kind of do like a little workaround. I find those to be the most frightening of all mountains, I think.
This is up just before where we got the rope out. You got to go up and around and up. And then Az putting in the boot pack over to the summit, and I am belaying him.
Yeah, and we went like a little off the standard route, I think. So we ended up going like, there's a spot I think you're supposed to go right, but we just went straight up. And so like when I got to the ridge, I was like, oh, it's just gonna be easy because all the beta I'd read is like once you get past that first crux, it's easy. And then we got up there and it's like this knife edge like ridge, and this was like the right-hand side was just like 2 or 3 inches of snow on like a slab of rock, and then it's super exposed on the other side. So we were like, wow, well, this sucks.
Some of my friends, Paige and Elliot, had done it and had given me the beta on that. And then rappelled down. And then we got to ski. We took our skis, so we got to ski down that upper part.
Yeah, and it was great snow. We had like perfect snow conditions.
This is getting towards the end here. This is from Golden Crown, which I did just last winter. And we climbed up, and this is along the ridge over to the summit. It was pretty straightforward. And we skied down Golden Crown and crossed the Sparrow Glacier, and then came up through a pass over to Roost, and through another pass, and then climbed Roost, and then skied down. This is on Roost, getting to the top of Roost. And then we got to ski down the front of Roost. This is still getting to the top of Roost, though. The fun part was skiing down the front part of Roost. We had great snow, and it was so fun. There's all these crevasses, and it was just kind of surreal.
Yeah, it was very good skiing. And what was it, April? It was maybe April? It was cold for
It was really
as late as
cold.
it was in the
I feel
years.
like it might have been March. It might have been April. I was kind of hoping that we were going to cancel because it was really windy, but then we ended up going. I was kind of like all the way down there. I was like, maybe we won't be able to. Maybe this won't work out. But then we went and did it, and it was cold. But it was also awesome. And it was amazing how there actually was, I thought, we were going to get up there, and the snow, it had been so windy, the snow was just going to be all beaten into submission, and not worried about avalanches because it had been so windy. But actually, we had great powder too, so it worked out. And then the last one I did was Baleful. So this is from Baleful. This is from Blissful Lake. We had this goat showed up, and he kind of crowded us. We were eating out on this little spot in front of the lake, and this goat showed up, and I went over and I was looking at him, and he kind of kept coming and kind of crowded us off the ridge. It's like, hey, okay. So we retreated.
Yeah. He was getting uncomfortably close, like within like 5 feet. He climbed right up. So you can see we're like up on like something that's like 10 feet above him. He climbed right up there and then was just continually driving us back. Territorial.
We woke up in the morning, and we were completely in the clouds, and I was kind of like, gosh, we're not going to be able to do it. But we went ahead and started, at whatever, 4 a.m. or something ridiculous hour, and started up and got up to the snow, and you couldn't really see where to go. It was all foggy, and we got up there, and I was telling Az, I don't think we're going to be able to do it. We're not going to be able to see. This isn't going to work out. And Az looked at me and said, Mom, you just follow the geo-route. Just, I got the GPS track. It's all good. Just follow the geo-route. It works really well. And it did. It actually did. We got up above. So we, once we got off the snow, we got above the clouds, and then we were above the clouds all day. As soon as we got to where we had to, get the rope out and start climbing, the rock was actually dry, and we were on dry rock, and above the clouds all day. It was wonderful. It was really cool because anyway, here's the photos.
Yeah, and I had remembered from our Kelly, my mom had forgotten, but from our Kelly, experience with Kelly Peak and Gaia, that you can just really do anything with the tracks. So you had taught me the skills, but you had forgotten about them
I kind
over
of forgot,
time.
I guess. I got a new phone and I, lost the. Baleful was a really fun climb. It almost seemed easier. I felt like the miter was a little harder because we had so much information on Baleful when we got there. We had a GPS track. We knew where the cruxes were going to be and had seen so many pictures, and it was still awesome. I was stoked to actually be to do it, but it is different, and I feel like that's one of the big changes that with the Chugach, for me anyway, it used to be a lot more exploratory because not as many people had done it, or you'd go and you'd come to the meetings and try to talk to somebody that had done it, and maybe get information from somebody that would give you and then you'd go out and be like, oh, this doesn't seem like there's a trail where you said there was a trail. But yeah, it's different. But it's it's awesome, and there's more people too, but that's fine. It's good to see people using the park. I'm happy for that.
It's particularly good when they bring clippers, clip out the trails. That is great. So Icicle Valley is a great spot to go. I would highly encourage anyone that wants to bring clippers. That's a good spot.
More trails, yeah. Such great hiking, really. If the trails were more brushed out, I feel like it would be kind of like world-class hiking here. But we're lucky enough that it's not, and so we have it to ourselves. This is the summit.
That's a good photo of the summit stretch. So it's not as far and as bad as it looks, but you get up there and you've already been scrambling a while. But fortunately, I think if we had been climbing it with no previous information, you'd get up there and be like, oh, this is not good. But because you've heard from so many people, oh, once you get up there, it's not that bad. And it just makes it so much easier to overcome those hurdles.
Yes, thanks to Steve and Neely for filling us in. Back across the white slab. And we did a bunch of rappelling. This is a really chossy crux on Baleful. And Blissful Lake at the end. We had a beautiful time at Blissful Lake afterwards.
Yeah, we got to size up all the Hunter Creek peaks and kind of oh, that would be cool. Let's go over there.
That's next. Yeah, still have those. I still have stuff to do.
And that's the final slide.
That's the end.
Let's see if anyone has questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Hi, Gabrielle.
Yeah, so when you go up with ropes and you've got your harness, do you take protection as well, or is it strictly just mostly rope harness? Do you ever take any nuts, or?
Yeah.
It all depends, I guess each route is different.
Each one's different, yeah. Usually what I tend to take is just a lot of really big webbings.
I heard you say, I just want to web the whole ridge.
Yeah. Usually that's, and not like the pre-sewn webbings, but 30 feet of webbing It's kind of been my thing. The rock's also loose. It's hard to find. I feel like it's hard to find spots because it's just chossy. But if you can sling something big enough, then, or that's all connected. Sometimes there'll be a smaller thing. I don't know. That's been my thing. I guess we've taken nuts a little bit.
We have. I don't know if we've ever actually used a camera or not, but we have taken them. Usually webbing is the best.
Yeah, it seems the most, useful. What do you got?
Yeah. How many people have climbed all 120 peaks in the park?
So I was the 11th person to finish this last summer. Has anyone else finished since me? Do you guys, Steve, do you know? So as far as I know, 11. And I'm the third woman to finish.
Azriel, 118.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
No, I got a while.
Where are Yaz?
I think I have 6 left. Because I got a bunch concentrated on the Klutna, way back on the Klutna Glacier. Yeah. So hopefully soon, though.
Dad, how many do I have left?
I don't know, we have to look. I have marked all the ones you've done down. You have like at least 15 probably under your belt, 10 or 15. So got to get after it. You're running behind on the family
You got lots
legacy.
of time. You got lots of time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
I was going to ask, with the second grader, how is the long approaches? Can they walk as fast as you?
Well, yeah, it's a little slower, but I just he had to come because that was, that's what we did. That's what I did. Yeah, it's a little slower, but it worked out. And then I'd carry more in the pack. And then as time went by, he'd carry more in the pack. So it's kind of worked out. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite trail snacks?
Favorite next trails?
Snacks. Food.
Oh, food. I really like potato chips is what I've been really into. And Lara bars, nuts. But I always take a huge thing of nuts and I don't eat them, is what I noticed. I think potato chips, because they sit really well in my stomach. They're salty. It seems like that's something I've noticed. But it does seem like the warm days are warmer, and you get up on those south-facing slopes in the brush, and it holds the heat in, and I feel like I sweat a lot more, and I've had to kind of adapt. I feel like that's so far my adaptation to global warming is more salt, like potato chips, and I have to put in, electrolytes in my water.
Yeah, Mom would always take really healthy stuff, and then I always had the potato chips, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, can I get your potato chips?" So eventually she transitioned over to just taking the unhealthy stuff from the start. But.
Did your mom ever have to get you to go, or were you always excited about it?
Oh, when I was a kid, no, I hated it often. Once I got out there, I enjoyed it, but there was lots of forcing me to go. So, and I've been kind of passing that on to Callista back there, because after doing it for a long time, I definitely took a break in my midlife and didn't do much, but then once I got back into it, I was like ready to go. So. Yeah, good work, Mom. Good work. Good work forcing me to go.
What was a peak that you thought was going to be easy, but ended up being a lot harder than you expected?
I don't know. I think maybe Polar Bear, because I ended up going back for it quite a few times, and I think I thought it was going to be easier than it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rachel.
Can you talk to the changes you've seen over time in the glaciers and just some challenges with access due to the shrinking of the glaciers?
Oh yeah, like a Klutna Glacier has shrunk way back, and it's changed it a lot. Right now it's pretty easy to get on, actually, but for a long time it was hard to get on, and it's definitely shrinking quickly. They're all shrinking very quickly. Can you think of any in particular? Mainly
Glaciers.
a Klutna Glacier is the one, because that's the one that I've been on and off so many times, and the glacier used to come out, like the Mitermite, it used to come out, and Mitermite was, the Klutna Glacier came down to it. Like that first photo of me with that big backpack going into a Klutna Traverse, the glacier was, down past Mitermite. I'm sorry, I don't have a clear way to describe it. But it is way receded. Now it's way up around the corner. You have to go up over these cliffs and get up there on it.
You used to get on the looker's right-hand side, right?
Yeah, Wayne
one
and I
point.
used to get on the right side, and now there's no way you're going to get on the right side. We used to do this weird scramble and then come down and get on it instead of having to go over by Mitermite. But yeah, now there's no way you're going to do that. It's very much changed. Gabrielle.
When you're in a crux in a stressful situation, you guys are out there, do you have one tip, like communication-wise, or like how to, get through that, where you're kind of
What do you think, Cass?
I think being patient with the situation, probably. Like, there is a tendency to like push and kind of rush, and you really just need to slow down in those situations and not panic. Because it's like, at least for me, it's pretty easy to like just start going even faster when you start panicking, and then you're just getting yourself like further into kind of a gnarly situation. Whereas if you stop and think about it, like you're like, okay, well maybe I want to get the rope out actually. And then you get the rope out and you're like, wow, that was way more comfortable. I don't know why I was just scrambling up this thing with no rope, you know. I would say that, you know, patience is probably the best.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Patience. I tend to want to run away, and that's probably why it's taken me so many times to come back and come back over and over and finally finish it. Anybody else have? Steve.
Now that you've completed it, what was your favorite part of the whole thing? Is it the camaraderie, being in the mountains, the achievement of a goal? Can you speak to that?
I think being in the mountains with friends. That's my favorite part. That's my favorite thing to do. Still is. Yeah, thanks for asking.
How did you first get into hiking and mountaineering? Did your parents also bring you on mountains when you were little?
Yes, I grew up in Juneau, so there's mountains right out of town, and my parents were climbers also, so yeah, yeah. Anyone else have anything?
I had one thing I just wanted to say. So a lot of the photos at the beginning of the slideshow we got from Wayne Todd. We did a bunch of climbing with him back in the day. So he was nice enough to give us all these awesome slides, and he must be a really good photographer because back then you couldn't take 5 million digital photos, and he captured a lot of really good moments. So I just want to give him credit where credit's due there.
Yeah, good, yeah. And I'm always looking for new friends to climb with, so I'll just put that out there.
Oops, was I not supposed to?
Okay, thank you guys so much. That was such a good presentation. Thank you all for coming out. We may have to be out of the room by 8, but feel free.